Royal Canin, incredible in every detail.
Welcome to Pure Dog Talk. I'm your host, Laura Reeves, and I am joined today by an extraordinarily special guest, my friend Betty Ann Stenmark, who is judging Best in Show tomorrow night at Westminster Kennel Club. And podcast listeners, you will remember Betty Ann and I spoke at last year's Westminster Kennel Club, actually, and we gave you a number of good topics, including Dandy Denmark Terriers and putting on a dog show. But what we did not talk about is judging and what Ms. Stenmark is going to be looking for in her Best in Show ring tomorrow night. So here you go.
So I think I'll be as surprised as all the rest of you as to what walks in. Somebody asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, heck, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so the big question then is talk to our listeners about when you're judging dogs in any ring. What are you looking for? What is, as a generic thing, not necessarily a breed or anything else, what is the most important piece of what you're looking for in that ring?
Alrighty. I'm a breeder. I'm always a breeder. I judge as a breeder. I am selecting breeding stock. It may not be the thing that's done today all that often, but it is foremost in my mind. So when I look across the ring, I want to see the breed silhouette, the correct one for its breed. I want to see a dog who can use himself efficiently and appropriately for his breed. If the dog's meant to race around the ring, have at it, but if it's meant to have a stilted gait, you better be doing it. To me, obviously the head type, the correct expression and head for the breed is ultimately important, but so is how it's put together. And if the dog doesn't have a front assembly, I'm moving on. I'm a very unhappy judge if I'm pushed to the point I have to put a dog up with a front assembly that isn't good, because it's the most complicated part of breeding dogs, and if it's not there, it's gone forever. You could work for 8 or 10 generations and never put it all back together. And it's so important because of how the dog holds its head, how it uses its front, its rib cage, its whole being is dictated by the correct front assembly. It took me a few years as a breeder to figure out what they were talking about, but it was way more than straight front legs when that was appropriate. But it is the ultimate as a breeder. I can fix a head, I can fix a rear, I could never really fix a front assembly. So that is, as a judge, really important to me. And tail carriage is another. The waving flag on a dog who shouldn't be having a waving flag is not, it's like a red light going on and off. That's not a good thing. And I am okay with less than flawless coming and going, as long as the dog can use itself as viewed from the side, because I can't think of a reason for flawless coming and going if the dog can't cover ground. And it's interesting, coming and going can look perfect with a dog who doesn't have a lot of yardage to cover, because there's less room for mistakes. And that little dog can then run around the ring and work awfully hard. Yes, yes. So those things are very important. Condition is important. You're not going to go very far with a fat dog, which I always do mention to the handler afterwards. Could I make a suggestion? So condition is good. Coats come and go, but structure never does. And I can look past a dog who is maybe in July, who's a little out of coat, because it just is how it is.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to touch on one other thing that I think is really just cool, just kind of an interesting historical note. Your original primary breed was St. Bernards.
Yes.
And our obedience judge, who we also spoke to, Mr. John Cox, his breed is St. Bernards. So tell us, how long have you guys known each other?
We're older than we look.
That's good, because you look 30, huh?
Yeah, right. So I think John and I have known each other since 1968 or 9.
That might have been the year I was born, if I was going to actually admit to it.
How I wish. Yep, and John still has St. Bernards. He has been a dedicated St. Bernard person his entire life. And back in those days, I had sweatshirts, and my boss wouldn't get in my truck because it smelled so badly. So I changed a little bit. Not that John hasn't, but I moved on. He has not. And it was fun last night at the judges' dinner to connect with him and his wife, Sue, who are brilliant obedience judges and super nice people.
Absolutely. Had a wonderful time talking to John. He was just the favorite part, and I keep saying this because I talked to David Haddock too.
Yes.
Favorite part of this combination obedience that they've done. So they have this second round, and the judging criteria is the dogs and handlers, the joy.
Oh.
They're judging the joyous present. I'm like, that is like the coolest thing. Okay, so talk to us a little bit about what you are excited about, nervous about. I mean, this is an incredibly honoring assignment.
It is. I'm not nervous. I was amazed last night because I spoke at the judges' dinner, and it took me forever to write that. But anyway, I finally came up with a few self-deprecating things about me, and that was easy, and I'm really not nervous about tomorrow night. I'm anxious to get in there, and if it's like previous times I've done groups, I'm thinking, okay, everybody step aside, I'm ready in there. I've been looking forward to this for 2 years, so what's going to happen? So I'm as anxious to know what those 7 dogs will be as everybody else is. It'll be quite fascinating, really.
I think this is going to be a very interesting year. The rumors on the street are you could have a really amazing lineup of dogs. So,
you know, one does hope. And I will tell you a funny story. Many years ago, it was a March Del Val, and we had an absolutely fantastic Best in Show lineup. And Bud McGivern was judging for us, who was a Westminster Kennel Club member and a great character. And he said to my late husband, gee, I wish we'd had a lineup like this at the Garden. And Roy turned to him and said, well, they were all there. It's been one of my favorite stories because that is the Garden. It's not easy to win the breed. It's not easy to win the group. The competition is incredibly of such high quality, and everybody has their own opinion, and it doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong, but they're paid to judge on the day, and that's what happens. So sometimes the expected doesn't happen.
I would say it's one of those things, my opinion, more often than not, the expected doesn't happen.
Yes, absolutely. I came here years ago with a dog, and there were only 2 Dandy Dinmonts, and 5 minutes later I was a loser. That was unexpected. And of course, we thought we could place in the group that night.
Of course, because you always lose the breed when you are just sure that you can get a ribbon.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was great fun.
Oh my God. Okay, your favorite Westminster Kennel Club story. You've been coming for years as a judge, as an exhibitor, and now doing Best in Show. Think back, think of, I mean, the stories, the myths, all of that. Think of your personal favorite.
That is a difficult thing to identify just one.
Okay, a couple.
Some we can't speak about. I think as a judge, one of my favorite moments was the first time I judged on the floor of the Garden. Was 4 terrier breeds, Cairns, Dandies, Skies, and Westies I had been entrusted with. And I can remember walking out into the middle of that ring and looking around at the gallery and thinking, they probably know more about these breeds than I do, except for one of them. And that was a daunting experience. It was a little tiny ring, and I can remember in Westies it was very, very competitive. And as it's heated up, they started running around my feet. And I sort of got an impression about how John Cole must feel looking from above down on the dogs. And I can remember yelling, back, back. That was an extraordinary experience that first time. I think everybody is a little bit daunted by the first time they walk out on the floor of the Garden. As a group judge, doing the Terrier group in 2005, you know, we're mic'd up and we have this battery pack on our back, or at least we did back then. And I leaned over the first dog in the lineup, and the battery pack hit me in the back of the head. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? So I straightened up and examined everybody else from quite a different position and streaked back over during the halftime to have that fixed. And it was not that hard to fix, but it reminded me of when Barbara Heller was out there. And I don't know where she had that.
I miss Barbara Heller.
I don't know where she had that battery pack, but it went to her feet.
Oh my gosh.
And I could still see Michael Save diving down the front of her gown to retrieve it. That was a great moment. You had to be there to see it.
That's one of the things I think about the garden is it brings back memories of some of our favorite people.
Yes.
I mean, Barbara Heller gave me my first group win ever.
Did she?
She did. And I miss her terribly.
Oh, and I went to the opera on Saturday. I miss Sam Draper, who always took us.
Right.
Everett Dean always used to come to me and say, Betty Ann, would you walk me into the garden? I always get lost there. He was so cute.
Oh.
And there was lots of great people that I'm missing. But as I get to this point, I used to be the junior judge. Now I'm one of the seniors. That's a shock until I look in the mirror and I think, okay, who is that woman? But anyway, here we are. All these years later, I never thought I would ever be judging Best in Show at the Garden. Friends would say, oh, sure you're going to, but I never thought so. I mean, I'm the 142nd person in 142 years that has had the honor of doing this. It's going to be a great privilege to get my hands on those dogs. It's going to be great fun.
It is an absolute, and you are going to do an amazing job.
I always love it when people tell me that.
I have faith. How's that? I have faith.
All I hope is I don't trip on the carpet. Or I do something stupid like back up and fall over something.
No falling down. That is definitely not allowed. Okay, now you told me previously that there was a big story to do with finding your dress. Can you give us she just gave me a look. Can you give us a tiny little snippet of that funny story?
Well, it's funny now. It was not funny for a very long time. So I decided I would have something made. And I found the most beautiful fabric and bought it and went to a local designer and, oh yes, I can do that. And so I went for my first fitting and the bodice was about 4 inches too small.
Oops.
So she says, oh, do you have any more of that material? So we went and bought some more. And every time I'd go, and I was still living nearby at the time, nothing much was happening on this dress. So we moved to Grass Valley, so I now have a 5-hour round trip to have a fitting. And finally in November, I'm thinking to myself, I don't think this dress is ever going to be finished. So I had my sander go by, and I very diplomatically said, it's obvious you don't have time to do this. I think I'm just going to pick up the fabric and move on. So Sandra went in and picked up the fabric. Lady was a little excited and upset, but anyway, I had paid her a handsome deposit, so she had no complaints. So then I had to find another person, and then there was no more of that fabric. And so it all went. So the bottom line is I picked it up last Friday.
Oh my God.
In the meantime, I bought a backup dress.
You had a backup plan.
Which I wore for the judges' dinner. But through this whole time, after it was announced, all the women say, oh, gee, Betty Ann, congratulations on your assignment. Do you have your dress?
Right.
And I'd want to strangle them. I thought, if you only knew. And it was keeping me awake, and I thought, this is ridiculous. All over a dress? But it's amazing what people remember. So in my next life, I'm coming back as a man. Where I have to worry about what cummerbund I'm going to put on. My husband was moaning and groaning about getting into his tux, and I just said, I cannot find any sympathy for your problem or any interest in it.
Zero sympathy, honey.
So anyway, that's the story of my dress.
Excellent. Well, I am very much looking forward to the debut of this stunning and long, hard-fought acquisition.
Who knows? But at least it's appropriate.
Oh, I expect that you will be beautiful.
I can lean over and...
Oh, good.
All right.
That's good. All handlers and judges out there, remember, cover all the parts, man.
Yes, there's a few handlers who could think about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Betty Ann, thank you so much for your time. I know you have a power-packed schedule, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Royal Canin, incredible in every detail.